Hello, my name is Petra Hunger. I'm a freelance SD and LE consultant since 1998 and have been certified in TM90 in September 2013. While I was learning TM to prepare for the certification, I read the online help and I attended the SAP Standard 3 weeks training course. Coming from SD and LE, I was fascinated by the things that TM was able to do, but reading the online help was a long process and some of the things had no relevance for the practice or for the certification. I thought I'd make some films to make it easier for others to prepare for the certification or learn about TM Master Data. As it was a big effort for me to prepare the exam and also because it is forbidden, I will not talk about any exam questions. But I can help you learn TM so that you remember the things that are relevant for your project work and for the certification. In this film, I will talk about master data and give only a short summary about the TM processes and documents. If you want more details, please view my film TM Options. It gives an overview about the document flow and explains what each document means. You can find it on my Xing profile or on YouTube. Before we start, let me thank Avato Systems and their TM team for their support to produce this film. Of course, SAP TM is a registered trademark of SAP AG in Germany and in several countries. All related rights are reserved to SAP. Now let's move on and explain about the structure of this document. This second film of my TM series is about TM master data. I will start by giving an overview about the TM basic process for shippers and forwarders. Then I will come to the core interface. After that, I will explain the product master, the location master, and the transshipment location, the transportation zone, the means of transport, the resources, the transportation lanes, trade lanes and default route, the equipment, and finally the schedules. Before coming to the master data, let's quickly explain the difference between the shipper and the forwarder process. The shipper is a company whose main business is the sales of goods, whereas a forwarder is selling mainly transportation services. There are several options to set up a TM process for a shipper, but mainly it starts with a sales order that is transferred to TM as an order-related requirement, in other words, a TM sales order. When saving the sales order, freight units can be generated. 10 books ordered may become 2 freight units of 5 books each. This is done using the freight unit building rule. The freight order represents a definite transport and the truck that goes from A to B. It's similar to the shipment in SD and LE. Depending on the ERP integration option chosen, shipments and deliveries can be transferred to and from the ERP system at different points in time. Settling the freight costs can be done using the freight settlement document, similar to the shipment cost document in LE, but with more functionality. Several freight orders can be assembled into one settlement document. The freight cost is not based upon condition records, but on freight contracts with the carriers, called freight agreements in TM. The FSD freight settlement document can be transferred to the ERP, where a PO and a service entry sheet is created. This is exactly the same as in LE. These documents are used for invoice control. For the forwarder, the process starts with a sales order as well, but the sales order does not come from the ERP, but from the end customer. He calls or sends the order by fax. In SAP TM, this type of order is called a forwarding order, and it can calculate freight costs based on a forwarding agreement called charges in TM. Now we must distinguish two process variants, the one where the forwarder is the service provider. In this process, the forwarding order becomes a customer invoice and the forwarder sends a bill to this customer for whom he does the transportation. On the other hand, the forwarding order becomes a freight order and the forwarder may ask a business partner, say a small carrier, to carry out the transport. The cost that he must pay for this can be calculated in the freight order based on the freight agreement. The freight order becomes a freight settlement document and is transferred to the ERP system where it becomes a PO and a service entry sheet. When the small carrier is invoicing his costs, the big carrier DHL can control the invoice based on the freight order number. This was of course a very fast overview, but again this course is about master data and not so much about processes. Customers, vendors and materials are often created in the ERP system and transferred to TM. That's the purpose of the CIF interface. The CIF interface involves two transactions. The CFM1, where you can create in step 1 activation and integration module, which means that you choose a certain selection, group of materials, group of vendors, group of customers, and define a target TM system. Then you execute F8 and generate the model. Now you can use the model. In the third step, you activate the module in CFM2, and now you can transfer the data from the ERP system to the TM system. Let's remember, creation, generation, and the activation are preparational steps. In the activation screen, you can choose the Save and Transfer button, and this transfers the data that you have selected to TM. Let's do a system demo to show you. Okay, let's first look at the creation of the integration module, and we will create some customers to transfer. So here we have already some defaults. The module name, we can call it, for example, Customer Client 200. The logical system is already predefined, and the application, so we can call it customers, for example. And then we choose what we want to transfer here. For customers, we have to scroll down a little bit, and then we choose which customer we want to transfer. For example, here, test 5. And then we save. Actually, saving would make a variant. It doesn't make sense, sorry. We should actually execute. And then here we can see the customer, and we can see one object is found. We click on here, and then we generate. Now this is saving. And I get the information that the integration module was generated. So now this was the first step. Actually, in our presentation, this was the first two steps. Create and generate. Now we go to CFM2. Now we choose our module, which is already showing. And we say execute. And now we activate. We can look here. The status is X, it means it's not active. We click here, we say active. And then it goes green. And then we can start. And now it's going to transfer this customer to the TM system. Activation or deactivation is complete. That's all you need to do. Now the whole process was of course done in the ERP system. So it's in the ERP system that you activate the sending, of course, and then you can look in the TM system if the customer is there. I have just shown you how materials can be transferred from the ERP system using the CIF interface. But they can also be created in TM or not used at all. But let's look at the screens in TM. This screen shows how the fields shows the fields that are available in standard. We have a product name and description, we have a weight and volume, the country of origin, the material group, transportation group, and a few things about shelf life. A lot less data than in the ERP system, only the transport relevant data are there, and the data that might be critical to print out documents. Country of origin is a classical field on the export papers. I will not explain much here, just let you see the product master in the system and click on all tabs so that you can view them if you have no access to a TM system. As promised, let's look in the system at the product master. First, I have to call the NetWeaver business client from the menu, and then I come into the area where the data is. So we will look mainly at the master data area. Then we have locations, transportation zones, and so on the left here. And the product master is at the very right side. So here you can look at one test product. As I said, I didn't explain very much. You can have global data and location-specific data. That's maybe interested to know. Then we look at the first screen, which we saw already on the slides, with the same materials what I talked about. And we have property 2 with the APN number and the product group. Then we have a classification screen. We have the units of measure conversion between kilograms and liters could be as well. No? And we have ATP data. SMP1, packaging data, packaging material type, packaging group, capacities, storage data, handling indicator, item category group, and dangerous goods indicator and dangerous goods profile. So that's it very much what I want to show you about the product. We have a lot more master data to see. Our next subjects are locations. Location can be all types, can have all types as shown in the table and more. Production plan, distribution center, shipping point, customer, vendor, terminal, port, airport, railway station. They contain geocoding data to enable distance calculation and track and trace, and we see more about this in later slides. They can be assigned to transportation zones. We will also see more about transportation zones. And this allows planning with different zones using the optimizer. Locations can also be set up as transshipment locations. This means that the mode of transport is changed at this location, and we see more about this on another slide. For example, goods are brought by ship from the production plant to the port, and from there they continue the journey by truck. So let's talk a little bit about locations. As you can see on the screenshot, a location can have a location type. So this is a location type. It can have geocoding data. Yeah. So here you can say what's the longitude and the latitude. It can have goods waiting time, which is on the TM screen. It can have an address, of course. It can have resources assigned to it if certain trucks are only always start on a certain location. It can also have handling resources like a forklift. It can have operating times like opening hours, when you can actually go there or when you can start from there, which is important for the optimizer, of course. And you can assign a business partner. So now let's come to the transshipment location. I announced it already. A transshipment location is when you change the mode of transport. So you can see here a production plan. So this can be a normal location. Then by ship, for example, of course not by a sailing ship, but I use this one to make it easier to understand. You go to a transshipment location, which can be a port or a container freight station, where the containers are brought and they are they are unloaded from the ship onto a truck, and then they go by truck to the end customer who's expecting the package. So transshipment location is when the mode of transport changes at that location. I'm insisting a little bit because there could be a question about this. So you can see here that you can define transshipment location assignments as well. So let's look into the system to see more about locations and transshipment locations. Okay, I promised I'll show you the locations in the system. You can find them again in master data, transportation network, which is the whole network of lanes and locations and zones. And then you have here define location. We will not create a new location, we will look at an existing one. I have created Hamburg Port, and of course Hamburg Port is a port, location type 11,000. So we can look at the location. So we have here Hamburg, description of course, and then we have longitude and latitude, which is what I have put in here. Then you can give a location priority. You can give an address, of course, of the port of Hamburg, in this case, phone number without international procedures. Then in the TM screen you can put a minimum duration for waiting, so that you can calculate the time that it takes more exactly and take it into account when optimizing or when calculating delivery dates. And then for air cargo you have a security status. Then you can have handling resources, for example, forklift and stuff like that. And you can put operating times in for when you come into the port or when you go out of the port, also inbound and outbound. That's it pretty much what you can maintain in the location. Okay, in addition I want to show you how you assign a transshipment location to a location. So this is the second link here. So basically what you do is that you assign two locations. You give the normal location and you assign the transshipment location. So for example, I will say here Hamburg Gateway as a location, and then I assign Hamburg Port as the transshipment location. So I say create update assignments, and then I have one transshipment location assignment created or updated. That's it. Of course, it's interesting what's happening. It actually means that the two locations are linked. And later on, you can set up the optimizer to take this into account. The next subject is transportation zones. Transportation zones are dividing a planning area into geographical sub-areas. Within the planning areas, products are brought from a plant to the end customer. In TM language, freight orders are created with freight units on them going from source to target location to the consignees. If ERP integration is used, then the transportation zones can be created automatically from the address of the location. A location can be a customer, a vendor, or a shipping point. There are four different types of zones. The direct zone is when a location is assigned manually to a transportation zone. So you have a transportation zone and you manually say which location belongs to which transportation zone. This is a lot of work, but you can do it manually as well. You would only do that if you cannot use the other two types, or three types. The second type is the regional zone. In this case, the zone is created for a certain region, for example, Schleswig-Holstein in Germany. And when a location has that region, it's automatically assigned to this transportation zone upon saving. Also, the transportation zone can be based on the postal code. So you can create a transportation zone and assign a certain range of postal codes or individual postal codes if you want. And then if location belongs to that postal code range or to this postal code, then it will be assigned automatically to the transportation zone upon saving. Maybe a small detail which will be more visible in the system. There is also a mixed zone, and a mixed zone is when several other zones are assigned. Let's have a look into the system. So to define a transportation zone, you go to transportation as a first master data, transportation network, and then you go define transportation zones. So here you come to the screen with a top section and a button section. This is where you define the type, and this is where you give the name. So let's start by the top and give a zone name. I will call it DE Schleswig-Holst minus Holst, and description will be DE Schleswig-Holstein. Okay, now I created the top part. Now I can decide what I want to do at the button. Usually you do only one thing. You make a regional zone or you do a postal code zone. Actually, usually that's not right, because you could make both a regional and a postal code zone and they would be within each other. So say, for example, I want to assign a location manually. Then I click on this tab. Hello. Okay, first I have to say quit. Sorry. Okay, and then it will ask me for a location to enter, so I could enter here Hamburg, for example. And then this would be then I would assign location Hamburg, and I would have to assign all the different cities in Schleswig-Holstein to that. So I don't really want to do it, so I will delete it again. The type for the time being is here set to mixed, but it will change depending what I do here. And I can also change it manually. Now you can have a postal code zone. So in this case, I can give a postal code and a country. So I give the country, for example, and I put postal code region 10,000 to 199. This is not Schleswig-Holstein, but never mind. It's just an example. And then it will be assigned, and I can add another reason. I can make bigger postal code zones. And by this assignment, when I save it now, if any location is saved with this postal code range, it will automatically assign this transportation zone, DE, and so on. So I delete that again. And now I show you the regional one, and that's the one that I really want to use. Here I can choose a country and a region. So I can choose region Schleswig-Holstein. And so now if I press confirm, I will have that region assigned to Schleswig-Holstein, and any location whose region is then 01 will be assigned to this transportation zone Schleswig-Holstein. Okay, save. Just to mention it, because I promise I will mention it, you can see here the type is set to N, to M for mixed, because I had clicked on several tabs. So it's important that you consider that, because actually this is not a mixed one, it's a regional one. So I will just show you as well when you change a zone. Just a sec. Define transportation zone. Then you enter the name and you go into the zone. And you can see here it's mixed type. And now you can't change it now to the regional zone anymore. Type will be mixed. Just for your info. So for next time, if you want to create a transportation zone and you want it to be regional, click on the tab Zone Region Only and no other tab, and then this type will become R automatically. You have now seen how zones are created in the SAP system. Now you want to know what they are used for. They can be used to run the transport optimizer for certain regions only. They can be used to make separate zones per dispatcher. As you can see here on the picture, you have different dispatchers in different zones. They can be used as well to group locations into zones. And these zones can be similar to regions and countries. For example, Germany and the region Schleswig-Holstein and other regions. Or they can be simply zones that are company-specific. So these zones may only exist in your company because they represent the way that your schedulers are separated. To give you an example, the optimizer can be run for the north of Germany only. The optimizer then looks at all freight units and OTRs whose target location is within North Germany. As a result, it will generate freight orders that serve those customers in the best possible sequence, with a minimum of empty runs and a minimum of distance traveled. The optimizer can take many things into account, so this is a simplistic example, but just to give you an idea what the transportation zones are used for. Our next subject is the means of transport. It's actually not really master data, it's a customizing transaction, but I still want to treat it within the master data so that I can put it together with mode of transport and other master data like resources. So a means of transport is a grouping of resources. You can see it here. I will explain much more detail about resources in the next slides, but just remember for now, resources can be trucks or ships or any type of movable objects that can be used to transport materials, or also I give more details in the next slides. So here we can see two examples of resources. One example is the trucks that are owned by the company, its own fleet. So you have that person and he's actually shouting to his own driver. So you could have one means of transport, which is called standard truck's own fleet. And then you could have a second means of transport, which is called refrigerated trucks, so truck with a cooling functionality. And this truck is not your own, it's a truck of an external provider. So here you have that person doing a phone call and calling the external provider, and you have the truck with some other carrier name on it. So basically the means of transport is not to distinguish truck and ship, it's more special. It's really a grouping of resources, so you can distinguish own fleet and external provider, you can distinguish the standard truck with the refrigerated trucks, and we will come to more detailed settings that you can do in customizing right now. So in this slide you can see on the left side how you come to the means of transport with the IMG, so SAP Transportation Management, Master Data, Resources, define means of transport. And you can see what you can set up in the means of transport. So of course you have a description and you assign a transportation mode. So in the transportation mode you have something more simple, road, ship, rail. And then you can assign a resource class and you can give the low, medium or high speed. This low, medium or high speed or average speed can be used to calculate the duration, and I will explain this in more detail when we come to the settings in the transportation lane. But just remember, with the speed you will be able to calculate the duration. So if you want this duration to be calculated, then you need to fill in at least the average speed. Of course, it's only just approximate, because, I mean, the driver is driving a different speed every time, but it's better than nothing. Then you have the second click, which is interesting, the multi-resource flag. So in this case, when you flag multi-resource, it means that you create a resource which is a representation of different resources. So say, for example, it's not your own fleet and you don't need much data about this resource. You just need to know that it's a 7.5 ton truck, and you need to know how many of those you have available. You know that your carrier has 10 7.5 ton trucks available, and you want to plan with those in the optimizer. Then you can create a means of transport, you can click multi-resource, and then you have to create just one resource which is representing the 10 others, and the optimizer will know that he can use the same resource 10 times. Now the next flag that's interesting is own fleet or external providers fleet. So of course, if you click your own mode of transport, then it's your own fleet, and you may want to assign data like driver, and you want to put more details on the capacity. And then you can click whether it's passive or active. We will come to this as well and explain it, but just remember, passive is when you don't have you can't drive it on its own, like a trailer, for example, without any way to drive it. No capacity means that there will be no capacity, of course. And then you have that GIS quality sign. So here you can activate or deactivate the distance and duration calculation based on the geocoding and the average speed. So if you have disactivated this, then you will not be able to calculate it. When we look at the transportation lane, and especially the system demo, you will see what this could do. Okay, so next thing about the resources, and I promised I give more information. So you can see here, a resource are all the immovable transportation options that the company has. So here you can see the chess player. In some respect, the scheduler is a chess player. He has to think about the best way to go from A to B with the resources that he has available. So here you have trucks and a ship, a barge, and a rail car. So this is the type of resources you can have. And then you can have more detail. You can have a passive resource, as I explained, the trailer, which you cannot drive on its own. Then you can have an active resource with capacity. So this is the example of a truck with some capacity. Then you can have a handling resource, which is a forklift. And you can have a calendar resource, which is only allowing you to say if something is available or not at a certain day of the year or at certain times. So now this is the system of resources. So you can see here a resource name and resource class. Then the assignment of a means of transport. Then you say what is the what is the unit of measure for continuous dimension. Then you have the factory calendar, you have the capacity, so in this case it's 25,000 kilogram, and you have a short description. So in this case it's own fleet, and the truck has a 25-ton capacity. So here below you can see the means of transport is specified, and some of the data that we just saw in customizing are copied. So this was not a passive means of transport, no direct load, and this is not a multi-resource. So this truck is actually representing just one truck. If it was click multi-resource, you could here input the number of individual resources which are available. So that example what I mentioned where that carrier had 10 trucks, you could have put here multi-resource and 10 trucks. On the next tab of the resources, you have the transportation data. So again, here you can enter the owner if it's an external provider, and you can enter the registration country and the immatriculation or registration number. That makes, of course, only sense when it's not a multiple resource. Then you have physical properties tab, and here you can see a lot of data: tear weight, gross weight, tear volume, length, store width, a lot of data. If you are interested in that, read it on your own, stop the film and have a look what is available. I will not go into details. Then we have the capacity, of course. You can see here what is actually, you want to know what is fitting in. And I said already, this is 25,000 kilograms or 25 ton. And here you have more capacities. Then you can define downtimes. So you can say that, for example, from the 1st of January 2013 to the 8th of January, this resource is inactive. And you can provide a reason, for example, yearly review. And then in addition, below the resources where you can create it, you can also assign a driver to the resource. So here you can just say who's the driver, so you can see it here, the resource, and then you have the driver ID which is assigned to the resource. And of course you can also copy, you can create a template of a resource and then copy that resource from the template. If it's your own fleet, you might want to choose to create really all the trucks that you have, so that you can have different numbers as well. If it's not your own fleet, you might want to use the multi-resource functionality. Okay, so that's it about resources. Let's come to the mode of transport, means of transport, and resource to compare the three. So the mode of transport is really the highest level. You can have rail, road, and water. And then the means of transport is below that. So everything which is traveling on the street or on the road can be further subdivided into means of transport. So for example, own fleet, passive resource with capacity. So here you have resources which are trailers and belongs to this means of transport. Second one is own fleet, active resource with capacity. So now this thing can drive. And you can have different kind of resources of that type. Then you have external fleet, active resource, multi-resource. So now we have one truck representing maybe 10 trucks. And then you have external fleet, active resource, no capacity, and multi-resource. Now this is a forklift, and you can say at that point I have 10 forklifts available. The next subject is transportation lanes. Okay, the next subject is transportation lanes. Now, transportation lanes, if you are from an SD or LE background, are similar to routes, but they have a lot of advantages. They are much more simple to set up, and you can do much better scenarios. But before we start comparing LE and TM, let's explain what are transportation lanes. So basically, as you can see here, you have Hamburg and Shanghai, and they are linked by something. So you can link two places. These two places can be locations or transportation zones. You can, why do you do that? It allows you to compare costs for different mode of transports. So you can do different lanes for different mode of transport and maintain different costs for different mode of transports. In the next slides I will show how you do that. Then you can compare different carriers on the same trips regarding cost. So this is new, because in LE you had one carrier on one route, and there was no way to compare different carriers on the same trip regarding costs. So this is a very interesting functionality for optimization, same with the mode of transport. Then you can give priority to certain carriers. You can say, this carrier, I want him to be priority 1 on the trip. And if you have a second carrier defined on another lane, then you will still be able to compare the costs. Then you can give a business share to certain carriers, and I will also explain that, how you do that. So you can say this carrier has 20%, this has 30% on that region or on that transportation lane. Also, you can use the transportation lane to calculate or specify distance and duration. Calculation can be based on the geocoordinates, and specify means that you just say, okay, between Hamburg and Singapore it's 7,500 kilometers. And you can also specify the duration if you have it, if you can get it from the ocean carriers, for example. So here you can see 3 different pictures, how you can set up lanes. Of course, the most classical one is when you set up lanes for locations to locations. But of course, this means you have a lot of lanes to set up. So then you can compare the distance and the cost for each individual customer. But maybe that's not necessary. Maybe it makes more sense to define lanes from a location to a transportation zone, which means, for example, you have your production plant in 3 different locations, and your customers are in 4 different zones. Then you can just link the production plant to the 4 different zones, and the other production plants as well to the 4 different zones, and then that's enough. But you can also link transportation zone to transportation zone. Of course, if you don't link one production plant to one customer, then the distance will not be so precise. If you have a huge zone, then it will not be so precise. What you can also do is location to transportation zone, but your zone could be a postal code, and then the distance is still quite accurate. Again, the distance and duration is mainly used to optimize and to actually preview how long it will take and what the distance will be. You can as well update the actual distance in your system elsewhere to do the calculation. So you don't have to use that distance for the calculation. It's mainly here for the optimization. And again, maybe one hint. It's also an interesting question. Don't forget to link the zone to itself when source plant and customer are within the same zone. Yeah? So here I said you have 4 customer zones. Maybe the production plant is in the same zone as a certain customer. Then don't forget to link that zone to this zone so that you can go within your own zone. And just remember, a transportation lane has to be there for when you do some optimization for everything. Okay, let's look at the transportation lane mode of transport settings 1. So first, before we go into the details, I want to show you how you create a transportation lane in the system. So you find the transportation lane in the transportation network, transportation lane, define transportation lane. And you click on the link, and then you specify your source lane, source location and target location. So in this case it's Hamburg to Shanghai, and you say create. Then on the top you choose your means of transport. So again, you can see here the lane has the means of transport part on the header and the carrier part on the item. So first of all you specify the means of transport, and when you here say which means of transport you use, you will get certain customizing. For example, the average speed, which we talked just about. So I will choose here truck, and then I will give a validity for this lane. Of course, you can give a lot more. It will probably be valid for a while. And now here you can either fix the duration and the distance if you get it from your carrier, or you can generate a proposal. So generating a proposal means that it will take the geocoordinates in the Hamburg location and the geocoordinates in the Shanghai location, and it will calculate the distance. and then it will take the average speed and multiply the distance by the average speed per hour, also kilometers per hour, and it will get the duration. So we will do it, generate proposal, and it is coming with a transportation distance of 8,800 and a duration of 110. Of course, this is a great functionality, but on the other hand, the kilometers based on the geocoordinates are not so useful for Hamburg to Shanghai, because of course it's only interesting when you fly there, because then it's the flight line. But if you go there by a ship, then you have to, you can't go there directly. So you need to find out the correct distance, maybe based on some other factor. And if you do that, you just fix the transportation distance, and you can enter here manually, for example, 9,500. And then the duration, again, if you generate the proposal and you have fixed the transportation distance, it's not overwriting. And the duration, I think it was also changed. Let's have a look. I will do a proposal without fixing. So we have here 110 duration. If I put 9,500 and I say fix and I generate a proposal again, it's not changing the duration. So if you know the duration, or someone can give it to you, you can also enter it manually and then you fix it. And then you can enter the transportation cost. So here it's the cost by kilometers. So for example, €7 per kilometer. And then you can also enter transportation costs per mass, per kilogram or per ton. But here, let's say we put it per kilometer. In the sea freight, it's probably more often by tons. So, but just to remember, if you want to enter it per ton, then you enter it here, because the unit of measure is tons and kilos and so on. And here the unit of measure is kilometers. You can see a distance-dependent cost. Yeah? So this is also minimum cost, and then you can describe it. Then you can say whether it's relevant for carrier selection. So this is when you select the carriers. It doesn't matter if you click it or don't for us for the time being. And then you can say what is your priority, if your priority is costs or priority. So I said earlier that, and we will see it, that one carrier can be priority 1 and another carrier priority 2. So if you put here priority, then when you run the optimizer, it will choose the carrier with priority 0, 1 first. But if you put costs, it will take the carrier, it will show the carrier first, whose transportation cost times the distance is lower than the other one. So again, I said as well that I will talk about business share, but for the time being, let's come back to the slides. So in the slide, you can see the mode of transport or means of transport settings. So we are still on the top part of the transportation lane. And in the means of transport, I explained the priority and cost, what are the meaning. And then you can choose where the costs are coming from, whether it's from internal costs. And you can also say if you want the continuous move, what you want in the continuous move. If you say, yes, you want continuous move, basically what does it mean? You can see this picture here. It's actually a hub, and the truck is going to the first customer, then the truck is going to the second customer, and then it goes back to the hub to collect some more goods. Now, during this trip, when it goes back, it's empty, and when the system tries to add a freight unit to this empty trip, then this is called continuous move. So for example, while the truck driver is driving, there could be a third customer coming in, which is actually needs something, and he's still driving. So then he could get assigned another freight unit, for example, and another OTR. Then that would mean he can receive something, but he can only receive that if continuous move is set up. So remember this. This could also be a question. Now, the next thing is about share of business. So basically, you might think that carriers are always selected and only on price or on priority, but actually with big business like chemicals or oil industry, the carriers that have certain trucks that can actually serve the oil industry are very rare. And to keep them happy, you must make sure that they always have a certain volume. Otherwise, they go to another customer. So it's just common business practice. So you could say, for example, that you use 3 carriers and each one gets a certain share of the business to make sure all of them always have something. So this example here is carrier 1 gets 10%, carrier 2 gets 20, and carrier 3 gets 50. Sorry. So in the mode of transport, as a means of transport settings of the lane, which is the higher level, you just say whether the business share is possible or not. And on the lower level, where you do the settings for the carrier, you define what is the percentage. What you can define here, though, is the positive and negative tolerance. So, for example, if, say, this carrier has received 9% of your business for a certain day, say you have 1,000 shipments, or let's say you have 100 shipments a day, or 100 freight orders a day in TM language, then this carrier should get 10 freight orders, but let's say he has received only 9. So what's the consequence? So you can define a positive and negative tolerance. So if you define here 1%, then you are within the tolerance with 9 freight orders. And then the question is, what do you do as a penalty? So say he is receiving more or less, what is happening? So you can define penalty costs, for example, if he receives, if you really don't want him to receive more than 10%, you can define here a penalty of an excess penalty of, say, 1,000 euro. This penalty is not real. It's not real costs that carrier has to pay or so. It's only just costs that help you move the priority of this carrier. Because in general, the lanes are used to show which is the best carrier to choose on this lane, and which one should be chosen. Maybe you can have an automatic option. Then it helps you if you have penalty costs. That carrier will become so expensive on that for this shipment 10 or freight order 10 that it will the system will actually give it to carrier 2. So that's the idea of the penalty costs. And then you can also have transport allocation, and again you just say whether you use it or not, and I will explain what allocation is in the carrier settings. So now let's come to the carrier settings, but I will first go into the system to show you those settings so that you can see a little bit where we are. So in the previous demo I showed you how I created the transportation law in Hamburg to Shanghai, and how I did the higher level means of transport settings, and how I generated the proposal to propose the distance. So at the end I would get this higher level and I can click whether I want to use business share or not, use allocations or not. In the lower level part I do my carrier selection settings, and I can do several different settings for several different carriers. So here first I assign my carrier. Let me assign my carrier. Yeah. For example, I will search by carrier. So here I will choose, for example, carrier G in German. Then I will put the internal costs per kilometer, for example 7 euro per kilometer, or what I know, 5 kilograms per 5 euro per kilogram. Of course, just for an information, these are only transportation costs for the optimizer. To calculate the real transportation costs, you use charge management, and in charge management you have a lot more factors what you specify. This is just to have an idea of what is the cheapest carrier in the optimization. So then you have here the priority. So I want to give priority 1 to this to this carrier, and then I can say what is my continuous smooth arrival window. I have a separate slide to explain about why the arrival window is important. Actually, basically, if for example, you have to arrive at 9 o'clock back at the production plant, and you get the third customer on your way, then maybe it will take you 2 hours and you will be too late at the production plant. So here you can say, okay, it's okay if I'm 30 minutes too late, as long as I don't have that empty trip. Then here you can specify a maximum distance that has to be traveled in addition to the normal distance. Also, if that customer is 10 kilometers away, it's fine, but if it's 20 kilometers away, don't put it on the same truck, put it on the next truck. And then you can specify a discount as well. If, for example, it's cheaper to make sure that the truck is totally filled. Here you can say what is the share of business. So for this lane, so between Hamburg and Shanghai in a certain period, here the period is from the beginning until the end of the year, you say this customer has to get this carrier has to get 20% of the business share. So for people who are used to treat the carriers badly, they don't even understand why this share of business is needed. But with people who work on a long-term basis with very specialized carriers, which they cannot find around the corner easily, this share of business is important. Okay, and then you have the TM tendering, and I have a slide about this. So let's just save our settings. Yeah, and I just confirm, and then we will see, we have here the carrier and the carrier's name, and then a summary of what we have set up, what is the transportation cost per kilogram, and what is the carrier cost. And of course, I can set up a second carrier. So this is maybe one of the differences in comparison to the route. In the LE route, you have to create another route to be able to do to handle different carriers. And of course, in the shipment, you can also assign only one carrier. But here, using the optimizer, you can really look at different carriers and compare the costs of different carriers when you do your optimization. And in this course, I will not treat the optimizer, but I'm planning to do a film about the optimizer. You will see how handsome it is to really see the different carriers and how much they cost before you decide to whom you give that trip, or in TM language freight order. So let's come back. So enough for the presentation. Maybe I just add the second business partner here, so that you can see it's really possible to define two different carriers for the same lane. So here I can say the cost is 6 per kilogram and 7 per kilometers, or let's put 4 per kilometers. Priority is 2. And then share of business, I don't put anything. I will treat my carriers badly. So now I confirm. And now the entry doesn't exist, so probably I haven't chosen the carrier. Sorry, there was a problem with saving this one. I chose another one and I saved it. So now you can see here there are different carriers assigned to the same lane. And so this means if you travel with this lane, you can see in the optimizer the different carriers that are possible if you're using transport proposal, or the system will automatically determine the one that you want based on the settings that you have made in the mode of transport. If you want to look at the settings again, you can go up again. And here you can say, of course, if you want what you want to do. So here it's neither cost nor priority, then there isn't any information. If you do cost, it's good. You can also do cost and priority. In this case, if I do priority, then it will choose the one with priority 01. I think it's very clear now, so I will save the transportation lane. And we come back to our slides. So on this slide, I promised I have a slide about continuous move settings. So in the means of transport settings, we said we want to consider continuous move. So here again, customer 1, customer 2. If I go to customer 3, I have to specify within the carrier settings what is my arrival window. So in this case, I can add customer 3 as long as I'm between half an hour and 2 hours later than usual at the arrival point, but not more. Of course, the same works as well for the departure. And I've also set up that if the arrival time is not more than 2 hours later, and I've also set up that the maximum distance, also additional distance, for the whole transportation lane for this third customer is 50 kilometers. So let's come to the next slide where we could look at further carrier settings, which we have seen on the system just now. So we said we can give a certain business share to certain carriers, and we said as well that we can allocate certain quantity to a customer. Actually, the allocation is exactly the same thing as the business share, but for the allocation, you actually define 10,000 tons, 20,000 tons, or 30,000 or 50,000 tons instead of percentages. Also, you have the TM tendering settings. So far, I explained that the transportation lanes they are used mainly for the optimization. Actually, it's not totally true. They can be used as well for the tendering functionality. The tendering functionality is actually functionality where you can send tenders to different carriers. You can send them to them and say, hello carrier, I'm going from A to B, I'm planning to go on that date from A to B with this and such resource and with such and such weight, what would be the price? Of course, tendering is especially interesting for massive means of transport, rail and rail car, ship, and especially vessel transportation, because it's very far away and it can make quite a difference in cost who's transporting for you. So let's say we are using the tendering and we want to send that data that we have on the freight order to those carriers. Then we have to say here which way we are tendering. And we are distinguishing here two ways of tendering. One is the peer-to-peer tendering, and you can see here the carriers are waiting in line, like the English people in front of the bus line. And basically that's what it means. First, you send your tender to the first carrier, and you're waiting for his response or not. If he's responding, then you send it to the second carrier, and so on and so forth. So if the first carrier was already giving you a good offer, then you take it. And if not, then you give it to the second carrier. The broadcast tendering is different, so you can see here a guy is screaming and all of these guys can hear that at the same time. So that's exactly what broadcast tendering is. It means you send that freight order to the different carriers, and then depending what you set up in the system, it's either the first one who responds, who gets the deal, or is actually the cheapest one after a certain deadline. It's up to you to define it that way. Okay, so this was it about the normal lanes, the transportation lanes. Now let's look into one concept which is there in addition, the trade lanes. And you can see here in the bottom, trade lanes have something to do with contracts. Actually, the transportation lanes were used for the optimizer and for the tendering, and they were used for all kinds of purposes, what we described just recently. The trade lanes are really purely used for contractual purposes, and you can still distinguish your Germany into different areas, but you don't have a UI, you don't have a user interface to maintain trade lanes. So if you look for trade lanes in the master data, you won't find it. The trade lanes can exist in addition to the transportation lanes, but maybe the trade lanes have a different concept than the transportation lanes because it's more related to the contract and not so much related to geography. So instead of messing up your transportation lanes, you can define the trade lanes totally separately. You can define trade lanes within allocations. So actually, we saw that in the transportation lane we can use allocation. So we can set up at the means of transport level, okay, use allocations in the transportation lane. And at the carrier level, we can say how much quantity of allocation we will give. In addition, there's also a master data object which is called allocations, and I will show it to you in the system. And there's also a master data object called business shares, which I will also show you in the system. And in both of these, you can use trade lanes instead of transportation lanes. And you can also use trade lanes within freight agreements, which means contracts with your carriers. And you can also define trade lanes for locations and transportation zones. So I explain this a little bit, and we will see it in the system. In an allocation, for example, you can say, okay, the allocation is 10,000 tons for that carrier, but 10,000 tons where? So you can say, for example, inbound to this plant. So anything which comes into this plant, this carrier has to get 10,000 tons, at least on a certain month. And here we distinguish inbound and to. So inbound actually means when you transfer something to the plant, and to means when you transfer or purchase something into the plant, and to means it's just simply a transport. Whereas outbound, it means you do a sale or you do a transfer from that plant, and from just simply means you go from that plant. Along means, in this case, I mean, here when you say outbound, you can specify, okay, it's of course there's no plants in TM, you specify a location, or you specify a transportation zone. Both is possible. So you say from that plant, this carrier has to receive 10% in a month of the whole business, and that plant is a location or is a transportation zone. So anything that goes out of that northern region here, that carrier has to receive 10%. I think you got it. Along means at a certain distance, also at a certain place from to. So basically everything that travels between this plant 1 and this plant 2, the carrier has to get 50% of it. Then you say along, and you specify a departure location and the destination location. Within can be again one transportation zone. So anything that happens within this region here, that carrier must receive 20% or 10,000 kilogram. Okay, I think that's understandable, and I think it becomes even more understandable if we have a look in the system. Okay, let's look into the business shares and allocations and how we do that. So first of all, now we're not anymore in the master data area, we are already in the planning area. So first, actually creating a trade lane is creating a business share for the trade lane. So let's start, create a business share, and here I can specify a reference, but I will just keep it as no reference, just to show you what's possible. And then I can create my trade lane by saying insert trade lane. I want to do a trade lane between Hamburg and Shanghai, so I choose along, yeah, or within. If I choose within, it will give me just the zone, and I can just specify the zone. If I choose along, I will specify as a source type location, and I will specify Hamburg as a source location. Then I will give the destination type as again a location, and I will say Shanghai. Then I will specify the means of transport. In this case, I want the means of transport to be ship, and the transportation mode, it's also ship. Hello, come, C. Transportation mode is C. Okay. Now I specify a start date, 1st of January 2013 until 31st of January 2013. Unit of measure, I can specify tons. And that will be important for the allocations, because you will see the trade lane that I create here in the business share will be later used in the allocations. Now I will say what are my sharing periods, and I will put here the months. and you will see that he will generate in each individual month for the carriers that I have. But that will be visible when I do it. Here I define a tolerance, so for me it's okay if it's 2% more or 2% less. And penalty cost will be a little bit, it will be 1,000 euro, 1,500 euro if it's less, and 6,000 if it's more. I really don't want this to be more than what it is expected. Okay? So now that I have done this, I can actually press start. Okay, and I put it in the wrong format. Sorry about this. I forgot it. 31st of December 2013. Start. Okay. Okay, made a mistake. And I start again. It doesn't matter, you will see it again, and that's good for you. So, source type, location, source location, I don't have to search for it, it's Hamburg. Destination type, location again, destination Shanghai. Means of transport, 000, I think I specified 001. Let's use truck between, okay. I will define ship anywhere because it's not really realistic to go by truck from Hamburg to Shanghai. Then start date of validity, what I want to do. The unit of measure, I will choose tons. And the business share period, which I say it's monthly. Negative tolerance, 2%, positive 2, penalty for less, 1,500, penalty for more, 6,000. Okay, now it's doing what I want. So you can see now the system on its own, because of the information it had from the transportation lane, it has generated me for every month 2 lines, 1 line for the first carrier and 1 line for the second carrier that was defined in the transportation lane. So as a default, it has put me 50 and 50. And if there were 3 carriers, it would have proposed 33. So now each individual month I can change it. So I can put 30 and 70 if I want on that between the 1st of December and the 31st of December 2013. And I can also change the penalty cost. Okay, so now let's save this business share and go to the allocation. So now when I create a transport allocation, I will be able to make reference to the trade lanes. First I choose the allocation type. In my case it's a carrier selection allocation. If I wanted to do trade lanes for freight agreements, I would have chosen the third one, but I want to choose the first one. So now I give a name for the allocation. The number will be generated by its own. So I will say allocation Hamburg Shanghai, and I will call it 2013, valid from 1st of January 2013 to 31st of January 2013. Planning period is monthly. I can specify here a carrier, or I can actually specify a trade lane as well. Now the trade lane is the one that I've just created, and it will be the last one that I have created, which should be number 6. Can I scroll down here? Okay, I've chosen whatever, should be 6. Actually, the problem is I haven't seen the number when I created it, but I think maybe it was 5. So now that I have chosen the trade lane, actually it's giving me the start location and the destination location, Hamburg to Shanghai, what I just did, and the means of transport from the trade lane or from the business share. And here I can specify a carrier or I don't have to. Now I can add the bucket. So I can say quantity is ton, minimum allocation quantity say 100, maximum 10,000. So 10,000. 10,000, okay. And now it's creating me the buckets the same way as it was before in the trade lanes. For every individual month I have that. But here I can only create one transport allocation per carrier. So here I really have to specify the carrier in the header data. So let's look at the carrier. For example, I can choose Kühn and Nagel. Okay. And now for every month, of course, I can change the minimum and maximum weight. And now I can save it. And actually I should change the name as well here. And I should call it Al, it's enough. Hamburg, Shanghai, 2013, or let's put it 2013. Hamburg, Shanghai, carrier, Kühne and Nagel. And save. The only thing what is maybe a little bit cumbersome is about the trade lane. You don't really know what the number is, and you can't really edit it as well. But apart from this, the allocation, as you can see, is useful and the data was saved. I'm not really sure why it's red here. Okay, so as you can see here in the business share, I cannot change the business share, I can only create it. And in the business share, I can also not give a description and not influence the number. I just have to, accept the number as I get, and then I don't really see what was created. Okay, that's not perfect, but maybe this will be changed with the next release. This release, what I'm working in here, is 9.1. Enough of the system demo. I hope you understood now transportation allocation and business share. So this was it about the transportation allocations and the business shares. Let's come to the next subject, the default route. Why do I mention the route? And first of all, it's because there are often certification questions about the route, at least one. So I wanted to explain you quickly what it is. Basically, the route is known from the LE. It's here, of course, different. So you define a default route to save time in the forwarding order. In the forwarding order, or in the you actually have to maintain all data manually. Just for a reminder, the forwarding order is the first document that the forwarder has to enter, as the transport service provider. He's receiving some fax from the customer, and the customer is saying, yeah, get me the goods from Hamburg to Shanghai. Then this fax is entered by some students or some workers into the system, and they have to create a forwarding order as fast as possible. So of course, it's useful, especially when there are complicated routes, to have the route defaulted. In order to do that, you create a default route in the system, give it a description Hamburg, Shanghai, validity period, and you give the route type, what kind of default route it is, and we will see it in the system a bit better. And you can specify transportation mode and shipping type. And then you can see here, for example, you have a route where you have a pre-carriage. So the pre-carriage is actually the way from your plant to the gateway, and then from the gateway to the airport. The main carriage is to the airport. Did I say airport? I mean port, seaport. So the main carriage is from the Hamburg seaport to the Shanghai seaport. And then the on-carriage is actually in Shanghai from the port to the gateway, and then of course there might be another on-carriage to the end customer. So it's important to distinguish this because it can be planned differently, it can be handled by different carriers. Probably the sea carrier is not the same as the truck carrier. So this default route allows you to just enter all those data automatically without having to do this manually. Let's have a look into the system to understand this better. Okay, let's first look into creation of the default route. So to find the default route, you go to Transportation Network, and then you say default route, create default route, and then you decide which type of route you want to use, default route. Then you give a description, for example, die Hamburg, Shanghai. Then you say it's valid from 1st of January, for example, to 31st of December 2013. You give a shipping type, for example, vessel. So, and then you can create transportation stops with a location. Say we start at Hamburg Gateway, and the next stop is Hamburg Port. The next stop is Shanghai. And the next stop is Shanghai Gateway. The guide is separated. Okay. Then you can say for each stage, you can specify the transportation mode. For example, sea. From the gateway to the port, it's probably a truck. From Shanghai to Hamburg, it's sea. From Hamburg to Shanghai. And then from Shanghai port to the gateway, it's road. Okay. So you can specify a carrier, of course, as for each stage. So let's put the carrier. Any carrier. This one, for example, 233. And then this one's different. And then this one is the same. So, okay. And of course, 233 doesn't exist. Let's take 225. We save it. And the default route is saved, and the number is 30,031. And we have to remember that because when we create now the forwarding order, that's the advantage of the default route. Once we have it, we don't have to enter that manually ever again. We can just create a forwarding order. Specify a forwarding order type. Transportation mode. We don't even have to specify this since we have just specified it. The default route 30, 31, and then the system will do the rest for us. Oh, I have to specify the transportation mode. I thought so. Okay. Now the forwarding order is created, and we will look into the stage area, and we will see. Okay, this is the message about SCI, I'll just remove it. I can't seem to stay on the current page. Okay. Something went wrong. And then I try it again. Forwarding order. Transportation mode. Movement type. Okay. So now we can see we have put the route defaulted. The stages as I have specified them in the default route. And that message about the ICA is just coming. And press Ctrl, just remove ICA here. And then save. Removing that. It's asking me to enter the partner data. But the important message for this is here in the stages. The data was defaulted by the default route. So let's remember the main message. The default route can be specified in master data, and it can be used in the forwarding order to default certain stages that are maybe a little bit more complicated, and also to default pre-carriage, main carriage, and on-carriage. There are other ways to default the source and the target location. So just for your knowledge, it's possible to default the source location from the shipper and the target location from the consignee. So that's another option to speed up forwarding order entry. You should have both of them in mind to be able to pass the certification. Let's come to the next subject, equipment groups and equipment types. One of the main advantages of TM is to be able to handle containers, container numbers, and also hierarchy of containers, meaning you can enter a forwarding order, then you enter a container, you can enter a level below the package, for example pallets, and then a level below the products. This is a very useful functionality which is not available in LE, and it's very useful especially for massive means of transport like ship transportation, rail transportation, and vessel transportation, air cargo transportation. As you can see here, there are simply equipment groups and equipment types in TM. So equipment group is the higher level. So you can have, for example, boxes, containers, as I mentioned just now, and unique loading devices. Unique loading devices are devices that are used mainly in the air industry, in the air transportation, because as you can see here, they can have some strange measurements so that they fit exactly in the airplane. So there can be different types, and TM allows managing those different types of unique loading devices. Below you can use the equipment types, and here we have made an example where equipment groups container are used, and they are separated into 20-inch containers and 40-inch containers. Of course, in unique loading devices, you could have a lot more equipment types. So now let's look at the customizing that we have available. Again, equipment group is the highest level. So you have actually an equipment group which is specified here with the description container. And then this equipment group can be used as transportation unit group, handling resource group, or vehicle group. So when you change this, you can see here, for example, you go into transportation unit groups and you choose equipment group CN, then you can go at the lower level, mode of transport assignment and transportation unit types. And at the transportation unit types level, you have the equipment types. So it might be a bit confusing because here you can see transportation unit type, but what you actually maintain is equipment types. But that is just to use equipment types in different areas. In the area as being a transportation unit, in the area as being a handling resource group, and as being a vehicle group. So, in addition, in relation to this, the customizing that's interesting is the default types in the order. So you can have item type simply container, and then you can default the equipment group CN, container. Or you could also specify an item type in the forwarding order, which is CN20, and you could default 20-inch containers directly. And then automatically the system will only allow you to, will default this equipment type. When you specify an item type CN container and you default the equipment group, you can choose from a list of equipment types that are the ones that are customized for this equipment group. So if I enter an item type CN here in the forwarding order as equipment types, I will be able to specify 20 or 40-inch containers only. And I can also default if there should be one piece only on this item, so I allow only one container per item, or if it's possible to enter several pieces, and then also I can give the unit of measure. So maybe for container it makes more sense to have kilograms, pieces and square meter rather than liters. So now we look at the usage in the forwarding order. So again, here we're looking at the forwarding order. You can see an item, container, and that's defaulted, and the equipment CN, it's the equipment group. And here, the equipment types that I have available are the ones that I defined in the system. You may think it's a difficult feature and you have to customize a lot to be able to use to pack products into packages and packages into container. That's actually not the case. All you have to do is have package types for the product, for the package, and for the container. And then you can do the following. I will show you how to create a forwarding order with several products on a container, because that's a great feature. So I just enter forwarding order, and then I enter source and the target location. This is just so that I have it. And then I will enter items. So we will as usual, we go from Hamburg to Shanghai. This time I go by truck, but it doesn't matter. It's not so important. What I want to show you is the feature here below. So you can insert a product, a package, or container. So you start with the highest level, container. And then here you see what I explained before. When I enter, I have CN as the default, because that's what we put that's what we defined in the customizing of the item. And then we get only the equipments which are possible for that item. So in this case, I get 20 and 40 feet containers. So if I want, I can choose 20 feet, and then I get some properties. Now I can choose the container and just insert a package within this container. Okay, and the system is going to put this below the container. And I can choose a package type as well. But for now I don't want to. Then I choose the package and I say insert product. And all that I need to have in the system is the different item types. CN for container, I showed you, package, PKG, for example, for package, and product for the product level. Then as a product I can specify books, and then I can enter the gross weight, for example, manually, 1000 kilograms. Once I save it, it will sum up the whole container. Now I can put the second product in. Let's put the second product. Oh shit, I don't want to put it below the books, so I will just delete it. I need to select the package. Okay, and then I insert the product in the package. As a second item, let's enter DVDs. And this time we do 500 kilograms. And you can see that the weight is added up as 1,500 kilograms, which is the sum of those two. And here, of course, you can enter a container number. And so you can manage the container for transportation, but you can also enter the product details in the container, which is very handsome. So I wanted to show this functionality to you. For me, it's related to the equipment and equipment types, and that's the whole purpose of that. Okay, let's come to the next subject. Yeah, before we come to the next subject, just something to finish on the equipment. You can use the equipment as well in the carrier profile. Basically, this is for the optimizer. So, for example, if certain carriers have 40 and 20 feet container, then they are chosen. They can be chosen in the optimizer. That's more important actually for air cargo. So certain carriers might have unique loading devices that you need and others don't. So then while optimizing, the system will only choose carriers that actually have those equipment types that are needed, that are requested in the forwarding order. So I will just show you in the system the carrier profile, where you can find it and how you can set it up. So let's create a carrier profile. You go to master data, and I will go to carrier profile. Then you say create. You enter the carrier. Okay. And then you can add equipment. And then 40 feet. Yeah. Yeah. 40 feet. Now you have specified that this carrier can handle 20 feet and 40 feet containers. So when you have 20 feet and 40 feet containers in the forwarding order, this carrier will be chosen. So the next and the last subjects are schedules. So schedules can exist for ocean, as it can be ocean carrier schedules, road carrier schedules, and flight carrier schedules. As you can see on the picture, schedules are simply regular connections between 2 points. Usually it can be more, but usually 2 points with a certain carrier. So in marine transportation, for example, it would be possible to maintain all ships or all vessels that go from Hamburg to Shanghai in 2014. And then later on, in the transportation cockpit, the scheduler can then see his freight units going from Hamburg to Shanghai with a weight. And he can also see the possible vessels as schedules. So instead of resources, he's then scheduling he can see schedules, and he can select the freight unit and the schedule and ask the system to generate the freight booking. And that way it is easier to schedule things on a vessel instead of looking in diverse systems for the vessels and looking in diverse systems for rail and in diverse systems for flights. So of course, when you look at flight carrier schedules, it's similar. So all flights that go, of course, cargo flights and flights that are interesting for the company. Maybe the company is only working with Lufthansa, then only all Lufthansa flights can be maintained in the system. And of course, to maintain those regular connections, there is a facilitation. But before we look at the details of schedules, let's look into the transportation cockpit, and let's look how this marine schedule can facilitate the work of the scheduler. So for now, we will look at the transportation cockpit. I will not explain everything about the transportation cockpit. I'm planning to do a different film about this, but I will just explain the basics based on the marine example with regular ship connections and freight units that are supposed to go from Hamburg to Shanghai. Where you can see different things, and the best thing is I go into the system. So we go not in the area master data, but in the area planning, and then we say transportation cockpit, for example. So in the transportation cockpit, you can freely define those areas here, what you can see. And you have to predefine the things that you select. I have here predefined a C selection, which means only freight units with mode of transport C will be shown here on the left side with the departure date and the arrival date, also arrival date here, and with loading and unloading location. And then at the bottom here, you can see the resources. So in this case, I have a ship here. You can see container and trailers, and you can see schedules. On the right side, you will see the freight orders or freight bookings. Freight orders are for truck and road means of transport, and freight bookings are for massive means of transport. In general, the freight order or the freight booking is the result of the schedule. So here, what we can do now is we can see, as we have a certain pre-selection. They say I have pre-selected maybe the deliveries in the next month. So I can see here what I have to deliver. I can see the status here, planned or not planned. And then I can see the schedules below. So here I have maintained a river vehicle. Actually, I've maintained it once as a container freight station and once as a normal schedule. Normally, you would see here all the different ships that leave in a certain period between Hamburg and Shanghai, because here it's also Hamburg and Shanghai, and that's what I pre-selected. Of course, I can select everything from Hamburg as well. So then you can open the schedule below, and you can see each different delivery as a departure date. So here we can see the next ship is leaving on the 14th, or the next IRIFA is leaving on the 14th of January. Yeah, and I can see the carrier here, and then I can choose the schedule. Or I can choose the schedule as a whole, and then I can choose the freight unit on the other side, here on top, and then I can just say plan selected item, which means that the system will generate a freight booking on the other side, and we can see it here. And the freight booking goes from Hamburg to Shanghai on the 14th of January, which was the first possible ship what I had selected. Of course, I could also use a different ship here, if I have them all available. And this, what I just did, is called manual selection. I could also generate transportation proposals. Then the system would show me all options that I have with the costs related to it. And I could also, of course, never go through this cockpit at all and just select everything and ask the system to generate the freight orders for everything. That's just for your information, and of course there's a lot more things to explain about this powerful tool. But for the time being, I wanted to show you the schedule. So you can see here the vessel IRIFA is here with all the departure dates, and in addition, you see it's going at 9 o'clock, and when you go into the details, you can see the distance, and you can see the carrier. And of course, you can maintain more data. In case of container freight schedules, it's possible to maintain more data. So I started with the end, which means I wanted to show you what's the usage of the schedules. And in the next few slides, I will show you how to create a schedule. Now you can see just this freight booking here was created, a number was generated, and the system has flagged this as planned. So just remember that for the time being. And now we can save the result, and then we can look at the freight orders separately, of course. Another information maybe as well, if I had here two packages between Hamburg and Shanghai, I could have selected the two as well and put them all together on the same vessel. And in addition, maybe an information, if companies have booked a certain capacity on a certain vessel, they could also handle that. Okay, let's go back to the slides. Just one or two more things to mention before we leave the transportation cockpit. I wanted to just quickly tell you the advantages In LE, you have the manual creation of orders and deliveries and shipments. So if you want to automatically generate anything, it has to be a development. And if you want to optimize anything, you have to connect an optimizer system or actually develop the whole screen and all that in order to do an optimization, and of course all the pre-selection in the background. In LE you have no container management, so you couldn't put a product into a package and then into a container, what I showed earlier. In TM you can manage the container, you can also manage a container number, and you can also manage the fact that you can 20 and 40 inch containers, and of course unit loading devices. In LE you cannot compare carriers, so for example here you can see if I had different vessels and different carriers here, I could see here a carrier ranking, and then I could see what is the cost for the different carriers, and in the transportation proposals I could also compare the cost. So after the system demo, let's look into the types of schedule. So on this slide you can see one vessel traveling regularly from port to port, and all those points on the card represent ports, and the vessel is going through all those ports. Depending upon the purpose of the schedule, they have different names. A sailing schedule is when you want to maintain schedules for a vessel, but the carrier and the capacity is irrelevant. It doesn't mean that you cannot maintain the carrier, you can still maintain it, but it's just not so important. In this example on the slide you can see the vessel Al-Rifa leaving on the 2nd of July in Rotterdam, going to Hamburg, from Hamburg to Zeebrugge, traveling through many stops until Shanghai. Let's create this type of schedule in the system. Okay, let's create a schedule. So transportation, so we are in master data transportation network. Schedule, create schedule. What you can customize in the scheduling type, I will show it to you after I've shown you the different types of schedules. For the time being, I will choose sailing schedule standard direct. And direct doesn't mean that I have only 2 ports. So, I can give a name to the schedule. So as you have seen in the cockpit, if you use the name of the boat, you can recognize the ship in comparison to other ships. You could also specify the carrier if you know him, because then the carrier will also copy it into the freight booking. So what was the carrier, what we were using? United Arab Shipping Company, UASC. Let's choose this one. UASC. Okay, in the description I put the same thing. Maybe we could also put 2014. It's just an example, but it's easier to understand if the descriptions make sense. That's what I think. So the schedule validity is from when it is valid. So in our case, the ship is leaving on the 2nd of July in 2014. So I can make the validity start on the 1st of July, and when it's arriving on the 7th of February, sorry, I'm not used to the American way of writing. So I will make it start on the 6th of February and make it valid until 20th of May. So I can make it valid until 21st of May. I will not specify shipping type or carrier, where I can actually. Vessel, okay, and the carrier, I have only another carrier available, but I wanted to show you that in a sailing schedule you don't have to maintain the carrier. In the container freight station screen, I cannot edit the start and destination location, and the reason why is that I haven't clicked this as a gateway schedule. and I will show you that in customizing. So for the time being, just remember I cannot edit this information. And now I can do the voyages. So the voyages are the individual trips from port to port. And I will not show you how to generate voyages for the time being. That will be on another schedule. But I will create here manually my stages. So for example, sorry for this. Now I will create manually my voyages. So now we can see what we have here on the screen. So let's start with this. So on the 7th of February 2014, the vessel Arifa, IMO number 1234556. That's what my schedule is about. Okay, and then I can enter the port sequence. So I will have to create here the first location. So the first location is Rotterdam, and the arrival date is 7th of February 2014, and arrival time, let's put 9 o'clock. Okay, then, okay, maybe I don't have Rotterdam, I should have so. Yeah, Rotterdam, written with 2M in Germany. And so basically I have put the arrival date, and I can also maintain an availability date and a departure date. Now let's create a second stop first. Create. No. The location doesn't exist. I'm pretty sure I've created it. But let's start it in Hamburg simply. So I will create Hamburg, then I create a second one. And what comes after Hamburg? Seebrugge. In Seebrugge it arrives, so Hamburg was 10th of February, so I have to correct that. Seebrugge is 12th of February. Let's say arrival at 10 o'clock. Okay. So now the departure date is open, so I can put it's departing on the 13th of February. Yeah. And then I can put the next port, Le Havre, for example. And then I can put the departure date, the arrival date at Le Havre, 14th of February. Okay. So you've got the point, whatever is the last location here, I can't maintain the data. As soon as I add another one, yeah, for example, Jeda, the date's open on the previous one, and I can put the departure date on Le Havre was 15th of February. Yeah, so then at Jeda, arrival at Jeda, 26. Okay, that's the long one. 26th February 2014. Okay, so you have cargo, cutoff date, and availability date in addition, what you can use and maintain. So this would be the kind of schedule that you maintain when a ship is stopping at several ports. Okay, let's look at the messages and an availability time that is not before the arrival time. Okay. You have to fill the availability date and availability time. So 12th of February, 10 o'clock, 14th of February, check again. Okay, everything is fine now. So as a summary, we can use the sailing schedule. We have to create one voyage with one date, and then we can define the different locations and the different ports with arrival and departure date. And apparently the availability date and availability time has to be maintained as well. Okay, that's it for now. Let's come to the next type of schedule. Okay, another type of schedule is the gateway schedule, as we will see on this slide. In this case, departure and destination points are gateways. So here, in this first case, we have a road example. We go from the production plant to the hub, and hub is another word for a gateway. And then from the hub we go to the local hub, and then from the local hub we go to the customer. So this connection here is from gateway to gateway. Below we see another example. It's the boat example. So again we go from the production plant to the hub, and then here it could be a container freight station, for example, where the containers are stored and registered and so on. And then we go by vessel, and here we go from Hamburg to Shanghai, for example, from container freight station to container freight station. For the schedule, there's not such a big difference. Actually, the main difference is that the container freight station part, which you have seen just now in the system, is editable, and the departure and the destination has to be a container freight station. And whether or not it's a gateway schedule, it's a click in the customizing, and I will show it once I've shown all the schedules. I will show the customizing points that actually make the difference. Just for now, just remember, a gateway schedule is a schedule where the departure location and the destination location are gateways, and where through the customizing in the schedule you can maintain more data about the container freight station and the best. Okay, let's create the schedule. We choose schedule type with gateway direct. So we are going directly from Hamburg to Shanghai. So, for example, Shanghai. It could still be a vessel, you know. So it could be also a river. Going from Hamburg to Shanghai. Valid to shipping type, ship. Okay. So now when we look at the bottom now, this wasn't editable in the last one. You remember, I couldn't put a location in, now it is. And now I have to put a gateway as well. Okay, and I put Shanghai gateway. Okay, now I can maintain more data here. Pick up transit duration and so on, precision, cargo cut-off, document cut-off, dangerous goods cut-off, because there's more processing in the container freight station, and I can maintain that data. So, in addition, we will see departure rules. So, let's first, I can generate the voyages. So first I will create my departure rule. So here I can say between the 1st of Jan and the 31st of December, that ship is going every Tuesday from Hamburg Gateway to Shanghai Gateway. If I say that, I can select this rule and then I say generate voyages for validity period or for a specific period which I want to enter. If I know that ship goes every Tuesday, I can choose validity period. Okay? Yeah? And it's telling me arrival time is invalid. I haven't entered much here, actually. I can enter the vessel as well. the IMO number, factory calendar, and of course here I can put a departure offset. Okay, it's telling me about arrival time. Let's say the departure time is 10 o'clock, as it would then go every Tuesday at 10, and arrival time is 12 o'clock. I mean, there's anyway a time difference. Of course, it's not taking 2 hours to Shanghai, but I enter here something. Okay, instead it's putting to 17. So now I can, hopefully is happy, the system, no. Okay, actually the interval is from A to Z and I have put a number, so I need to correct that. Okay, and now it's requesting me a carrier. So let's enter a carrier. Exactly. Save again. Okay, now everything is fine and I can show you how to generate the voyages. This is great. So here again, yeah, I have put departure and arrival time. I've put the vessel and the IMO number. I click Tuesday and now I can say generate voyages. Still I can't say it. I have to go into the edit mode again. Okay, and I can say generate voyages for validity period. And once I've done it, look at the voyage number here. Normally for a year, it should be 52. Yeah. So you can see how the system has generated the voyages, the individual trips each week on its own. So I can see here 7th of January, I was going with that same IMO number. And then on the 14th and 21st, and every Tuesday, as I have indicated here. If I had flights, I could put here 2 different times on different days of the week, and it would generate me the voyages. I don't have to enter that manually. Okay, that's it. So much about the schedule and the container freight station information. You saw it about the gateway, so you saw that the carrier was mandatory in the schedule. So that's it so far about the gateway schedule. Let's come to the next type of schedule. Last but not least, let's have a look at the carrier flight schedule. Everything looks similar to the other schedules. There's no container freight station section, but there's a departure section. Because you may have several flights in a day, you may have several lines here, as I mentioned already. One flight departs at 8 o'clock every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday, and another flight departs at 14 o'clock or 2 o'clock every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. So I think it's clear now what you can do with schedules. As the last system demo before we close this master data chapter, let's have a look into the customizing of the schedule type. Okay, to find the schedule type, it's SAP Transportation Management, Master Data, Transportation Network Schedule. So here you can see the different schedule types. Some of them we have tried them out. So let's have a look at the ocean carrier schedule. So we can see here in the ocean carrier schedule, gateway is not clicked. So there will be no information about the container freight station. Or let's say the container freight station data will not be editable. Then you have here the number range for the header, for the document as a whole. You remember we had an error because the number range was A to Z and I put a number in. So here you can define the number ranges. Then you have the voyage number range. So you remember we generated the voyages using the departure rule. In order to be able to do that, you have to have defined the number range for that. Then you can have change strategies. These are a little bit like user exit and saving. So you can define classes that do actually some checkings at the saving of the customizing. And then you have here the possibility to use capacity and transportation costs. I have shown you only schedules without capacity, meaning we were just considering that there will be capacity on a vehicle. But we could also say I have 10,000 kilograms of capacity on that vehicle only. In that case, you would have to click Use Capacity and Use Transportation Costs. And here you have a WebDinpro application configuration. That means that you can define your own screen. You can put your own fields in the schedule or add additional fields, for example. And then you create a new WebDinpro application configuration and you assign it here. Then the standard screen will still exist, but you are using some other screen with some other functionality and some other saving logic. So let's look quickly at an ocean carrier schedule and have a look at the capacity and the cost as the last thing that I will show you in the system. Schedules, create schedule, and that's by Y05 schedule type. And you can see here you can maintain weight and volume data, and then the optimizer can take into account what weight is really available on that vessel or on that flight what you are maintaining. Last but not least, have a look at the transportation costs. It's definitely interesting for people who are scheduling vessels regularly. You can maintain €7 per kilogram, or you can maintain fixed costs, for example, €65,000. So once you have maintained those costs, they can be taken into account by the optimizer. So I showed you in this presentation how the optimizer is used. You could, for example, use transportation proposed, and then you can directly compare the costs depending upon the vessel that you are choosing. It will be different costs, and then you can schedule the vessel that you prefer. And you can do that by separating the process. First, you maintain all the vessels that are potentially interesting with all the voyages, all the schedules, and all the costs, the regular costs that they offer. And then you can schedule them and choose the one that is the cheapest for that connection what you are trying to plan. Thanks very much for the attention. We come to the wrap-up. To wrap up this video, let's mention again that SAP TM is a registered trademark of SAP AG, and all rights of the software are reserved to SAP. Let me thank Avato Systems again to help me realize this video. Last but not least, let me thank you for your interest and attention. I really hope you found it useful. I wish you every success with your TM work. Should you have any suggestions, please do not hesitate to contact me by email. Bye bye now!